Okay, good afternoon, everybody. So we're here for a very rare event with a very rare colleague.
Why?
Very special, right? It is, of course, everyone here knows Rose Liu, but for the sake of people who may be watching the video later or in Zoom land, she is Associate Professor at the Department of Journalism, has always been known for very cutting-edge and often bold work on journalism in this part of the world, journalism and politics and communication more broadly. So we already have a rare individual, but I'd say this is a rare or maybe even first-time event, because I have never been to a book launch where the author has 2 books to launch, right? This is a first for me. I don't know whether it is your first time too.
That's not mine.
Oh, sorry, this is not mine. This is a book. It also has a red cover. This is a book that I was sharing in my class earlier. I was wondering why you're looking so puzzled. Same color scheme.
Yeah,
This is I understand the confusion. So these are the 2 books, right? These are the 2 books that we are extremely privileged to have Rose talk about today. They are only tangentially related. I mean, both, of course, are about media and communication in Greater China, I guess. So I'm not sure how you're going to connect them, but for us, it is enough that you are the connection, right?
Yeah.
You. It is through your eyes that we are going to hear about 2 separate but very important topics. China's international diplomacy, as well as the Me Too movement in this part of the world. Rose?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much for having me here. Thank you for spending your lunchtime here. And also thank you for joining us on Zoom. Yeah, it's I would say I have 2 books, but actually the first book, Wolf Warrior Diplomacy, the data set is a little bit outdated because it would spend 3 years for the review process, and it was originally rejected, and we just spent 1 year to revise it, so finally got published last year. So it's not very updated if you're looking at the data. But the thing is, I'm going to talk about, I think it's still relevant nowadays. And the second one, reporting sexual violence and Me Too in Asia, it's quite updated because I conduct all the interviews and the data analysis last year, I think like around August, July and August. So it's quite updated. Let's start from let's start from the first book. So it's where my research idea came from. It's as Sharon said, it's not related. But actually, this book is very much related to my previous work. I used to be a journalist, cover politics, and I spent like more than 20 years to dealing with those foreign ministry guys, because I follow those Chinese leaders overseas trip. So every day you have to dealing with the foreign ministry spokesperson and the staff. So you can also, I'm also focused on reporting the foreign policies of the Chinese government. So that's why I think I'm quite interested at the beginning. I'm quite interested in research on when we talk about wolf warrior diplomacy. I just feel very get into it. So here you can see, but that was 20. The first one is the CGTN. When the word talk about wolf warrior diplomacy, CGTN response and they said no, there's no this kind of thing. And in the middle is the Economist, and the cover story is about the wolf warrior. And this year was South China Morning Post. I think it's quite recently. There was a lot of discussion whether wolf warrior diplomacy still existed or changed the style of the Chinese government. This is from our book. Yeah, I have. This is the co-authored book. Is first author is Yao Dai. She is the political scientist and work for in North Carolina, and the assistant professor. We met at the date, and we took the same class at the political science. So then we decided to work together, write papers. And this was not our first co-author in the project. We studied international propaganda of the Chinese government before, published the paper, and this was our second project. And based on the published paper, and then developed into a book. It's just because the editor, I mean the publisher, just sent us an invitation and said, okay, are you interested in write a book on this topic? And I said, okay, we just do it. But although like this, we spent 3 years finally publishing. So this was the you can see in 2020, wolf warrior diplomacy is quite trendy words among the different media. So that's why it triggers us to have this study. And the research questions, we just want to put our research question in a more broad context. So how official is Chinese warrior diplomacy? And the WWD, a more assertive China or revisionist state to the status quo, and what the motivation behind it, and how has the WWD affect Chinese relationship with other countries. So these are our research questions, and the whole book is related. All this methodology, we have like combined qualitative and quantitative interviews, data analysis, computational data collection. So for the major data, we collect 20 years spokesperson's press release, and just using computational top modeling to do the study. And we also conduct some semi-structured interviews with the journalists who were covering press conference in Beijing of the foreign ministry. And also I would say we have some of the participation observations based on me, because I spent 20 years, almost 20 years to cover the Chinese foreign policy, and I have a very first-hand understanding and also observation of those policy changes and also style changes. Because the wolf warrior diplomacy, we also talking about the personal factors and the style of the spokesperson. So dealing with them almost every day, you can see a huge change. I mean, sudden change sometimes, I would say. Content analysis of news media, we also study the receiving side, because when we talk about wolf warrior diplomacy, usually focus on the United States and Western nations, quite negative. But we do really interested, how about the other rest of the world? So we just study the Latin America, the news media of Latin America, the global south, to see whether they will receive this kind of narrative or style differently. So actually the whole book and the project are based on the internal and the external factor analysis. It's like a strawman diplomacy, because compared with previous leaders, I mean, Xi has a very demonstrate a strong strawman personality or leadership. And also the style of China's foreign policy, foreign ministry spokesperson. Because if you talk about the person like Liu Jianchao and or compare with Qin Gang or Zhao Lijian now, you just can feel totally different styles, and whether the style matters and what are behind the style changes. And also the evolving global power structures, that was very important for our analysis to put the whole study in a more broad context. So here is the book content. So for the chapter 1 is the So we are review. So you can see we spent several chapters to review the Chinese foreign policy, starting from Mao's era and to nowadays. And you will see in Mao, it's from the great power diplomacy to major country diplomacy before Xi's presidency. So why we do this kind of, it's not a literature, but a review, historical review of the foreign policy, because a lot of people will argue like Xi just brought a new style or just a sudden change of the foreign policy, but we do like have a hypothesis or based on my understanding or observation for so many years, I just feel, okay, it's not like Xi personal factor have the determination of the sudden change. It's like it's more in line with the CCP's. I mean, the plan starting from Mao's era. So it will happen at some time. If not Xi, it will be somebody else in the future. So it's just because of the global environment or the status of the Chinese of China, so that which brought Xi as the position to make sudden change, so this kind of change. So here you can see Deng Xiaoping. We always say like 韬光养晦, yeah. So that's the major term. 韬光养晦it's to just hiding your power and to be more moderate and hide our capacities, bide our time, and make some achievement. Which means he considered China needed time to become a world leader. But he was very practical after Tiananmen Square, after you were surrounded by a very hostile international environment. So that's why China needed time to build up their capacity. But under Jiang Zemin, you already see it's changed a little bit, because under Jiang Zemin's era, saw the world as a multipolar instead of bipolar. So that's why the Chinese are more actively engaged in the international the game of the international game. So to obey the rules, but it's not to be the rule setter. But before they're just follow the rules, which are dominantly by United States. And then at the Hu Jintao also, yeah, harmonies of the world is also follow Jiang Zemin's path, and just to be the participation of the game player. But again, to Xi Jinping, and you will see it's more and more have the very determination to become a rule setter, to set the rule, international rule. So here you can see under Xi, under Xi, the Chen CCP view the United States as the dominant power benefiting from the unipolar world, the post-Soviet Union. So that's why anti-Americanism, it's a sentiment, it's a very strong sentiment under Xi's diplomacy. And the Wolf Warrior diplomacy reflects Xi's intent to reshape global discourse and also calls for but at the same time, she also trying to build up a very friendly world international image, right? So that's why he bring the term 命运共同体, 人类命运共同体. Yeah, so it's the idea to be more practical and then be evangelical. So then we study the foreign ministry's role in Chinese foreign policy decision making. Because if we talk about foreign policy, everybody will think, okay, to compare with United States, think like State Council or State Department, which was be the decision maker, maybe equally saying in China, it will be foreign ministry, right? But starting from one day of the founding of the Chinese Republic of China, as Zhou Enlai mentioned before, foreign ministry never be the decision making of the foreign policy. they are part of the international propaganda to propagate or to part of the to propagate the foreign policy of the party, the Communist Party. So Communist Party always the final say of the foreign policy. So I think this is a very important because this is the basic to understand why the foreign ministry, especially the spokesperson and the officials of the diplomats, or we can say diplomats, they just changed the style suddenly from a very professional, friendly image to a more aggressive in the past few years. So the change under Xi reduced the MFA's autonomy and status, and also compelling Chinese diplomats to strictly adhere to demonstrate loyalty to the party, because under Xi, loyalty is a very important thing. So to be more aggressive, which has have two benefits. One is for the domestic reason. So for the domestic audiences or the Chinese people, a lot of the people criticize foreign ministry, say them too weak when they dealing with those criticism, overseas criticism. So to be more aggressive and strong, which can appeal those public discourse or public opinion, and to improve the image of MFA. But at the same time, it also show the loyalty, demonstrate the loyalty to Xi, which is the most important thing. If you want to be promoted, you needed to show the loyalty to the leader. It's not only for the Ministry of Foreign Ministry. It's not for one ministry. It's for all the system, the whole system. So that's why you will see a lot of officials in China. They became more and more aggressive by using similar narrative or similar rhetoric as Xi in the past few years. Spokesperson. Style. So a new breed of diplomats. People will say it started from Zhao Lijian, but we argue it started from Qin Gang. It's not the new breeds that just bring the new styles. It started from the older person. And then it's driven by Xi. It's because of the fighting spirit. It's mentioned in our book because Xi just wrote a message to those young diplomats. You need the spirit of fight, 斗争精神. So fight, to be assertive to this style is also reflect the fight spirit. And also reinforce CCP control. Nationalist sentiment. This nationalist sentiments echo to the domestic national sentiment. If you talk about the national sentiment, I would say it's now we can see a lot of consequences, like the bus stabber to the Japanese students, or even nowadays when we argue Wolf warrior diplomacy might be disappear or restrained, but you can still feel that kind of strong sentiment. I'm going to talk about later. So focus on system, not individual. And so in chapter 6 to chapter 8, we're doing the analysis. So here, data analysis is a 20 years foreign ministry spokesperson's transcript, daily press conference. And we do in natural language process. We can see increase the hostility, and it's not driven by the new diplomats. Actually, it's constantly. It's constantly. So here you can see a percentage of hostile response by year, and of course, starting from 2012. 2012 was the first term of the first year of Xi Jinping became the leader. Became to power, but so and 2020 it's just because of the COVID and also Hong Kong and Xinjiang, a lot of issues which Chinese have to face a lot of criticism, so it became more and more hostile. And here is the content, the spokesperson response to different. In response to questions, right, every day during the press conference. So we're using topic modeling, and you can see constant and hostile topics. We found that 11 topics and almost 150 countries. Also we allocate less hostile topics. Those are more related to multilateral cooperation, like economic cooperation. So which also reflect like it's at the same time a nationalism or more assertive, but at the same time very practical, especially when we talk about economic issues. And new targets of hostility, like Philippines, it's just because of the dispute on Southeast Sea. Constant neutrality. Some countries you can feel for the 20 years as always like a constant neutrality, like Pakistan and North Korea. And strategic response and Chinese hostility towards different topics and countries varies, reflecting its strategy, its perceived core and non-core issues. Here is the core issue or the core national interest, 核心利益. So the hostility is quite in line with the definition, the scope of a core interest. So at the beginning, the core interest for CCP is only Taiwan, the territory issues is the core issue. But gradually, the core issues have more and more. The scope is larger, like Hong Kong, Xinjiang, and all those are included in those core issues. Human rights became the core issues too. Here are some findings because we have a lot of charts in the book. But here I just pick some of the charts to share. Here you can see is the country mentioned during the in 20 years during the press conference. Here is the percentage of hostile mention among or mentioned by country, and you can see the color, and United States is it's the main target. And here is the sentiment towards countries with the most mentions. Again, you will see United States, and also Japan, because Japan is more like our I always say Japan is it's all about the territory issues, historical issues, and because of that, maybe you can relate it to the recent incidents, right? Why bottom up there is so many hatred against the Japanese. It's not came from nowhere. It's just because for a few decades, Japan always considered as I would not say enemy, but the thing is, it's always been hostile. If you're using the official rhetoric or official attitude, and here we also do the global audience reaction. As I mentioned before, previous studies are more focused, even the press, they're more focused on Western countries. Seems like word diplomacy will be harm the image of China. But is that true? What about the rest of the world? Maybe the rest of the world, because sometimes we also read some stories that some of the country will consider China as a role model to challenge the hegemony of America, especially country hate American. So what about the rest of the world? So that's why we just do the content analysis in the Latin American countries. And here you can see some findings. The Latin American countries, we analyze Argentina, Brazil, and Venezuela. And you can see news outlets tend to report on World War diplomacy more neutrally, frame it as part of a superpower competitions. It's not a very negative. It's not like Western media. So can frame the be as assertive China. And the Brazil left wing support will be more positive, because it's anti-American, and which is in line with the ideology of the left wing in some of the Latin American countries. And in Cuba, there's no sentiment change, even there's some reports, there is some news reports about the diplomacy under Xi. And but at the same time, it's not an enhanced image, so it's quite a neutral. We have some discussions in our final chapter. So it's we have some examples of aggression spokespersons, and we also discussed the motivations. One, we argue like aggressive rhetoric seen as a defensive reaction to Western aggression, because a lot more criticism from the Western countries, more defensive reaction, and by using aggressive rhetoric, and also because of driven by Xi Jinping's call, and to show the loyalty is very important, because the foreign minister Wang Yi several times vowed to follow Xi's thought on diplomacy. So Xi, as a Superman, strong person diplomacy, you can see the personal factor in the performance of the diplomats. And how new is this aggression? Of course, yeah, Xi's diplomacy is more aggressive than his predecessors. And also he gave more attention to foreign affairs compared with his predecessors. And he also called China to put more condition before narrow economic interest. And it's relatively, but we will argue his diplomacy is relatively egalitarian and liberal, because at least on paper. So the documents and the terms he raised. But even in a practical way, you can see he dealing with different topics in different ways. It's not like every topic will be aggressive. You can also see the neutrality and also a very flexible response. So rhetoric versus action, because in Chinese saying, 要看做怎么做，而不是怎么说, right? So rhetoric is important, but action is the most important to measure the outcomes. So aggressive rhetoric didn't always translate to aggressive action. One interesting topic, I think some students maybe can study it. I think like in Chinese, it might be very aggressive, especially some terms or the tone. But in English translation, it would be relatively neutral if you look at the English transcripts. So you can see there's a different difference between targeting domestic audiences and international audiences. So I think that will also be a very interesting topic to study, lost in translation, or purposely to provide different sentiments in their expression. The government is not compared to engaging after issue hostile warning or threats. Sometimes just the verbal expression, and there's no consequences. I mean, real consequences. There's no policy change, or there's no actions. And is that doomed to fall? This is what we're always saying. So is that it will be disappear or doomed to fall? We argue like for domestically, it boosts popular support, and also direct the criticism, so it works. It's always in line with the nationalism in China. So nationalism as a reduction of the criticism to the government are being used starting from 1989 up to campus students movement. So yeah, it seems that it will be continued. And then internationally, it can appeal to developing countries that dissatisfied with the Western countries. It still works, especially, I'm not sure, especially nowadays, maybe after people are so disappointed or fed up by the Donald Trump administration, maybe China will be considered as the new leader. They can provide more opportunities, right? So, and also China's tough stance against the Western countries may not enhance its image, but it doesn't seem like it damaged the image. So for Chinese government, there's nothing to lose because, you might have some negative image among the Western audiences, but overall speaking, there's nothing to lose, right? So both were is just one part, but we will argue it's just one part of Xi's major power diplomacy because it's not only the WWD, it's still have the practical parts. So yeah, we should not like consider as the whole of the foreign policy of the Chinese government. So yeah. This is the follow-up question. So whether this is still relevant nowadays? Yeah, this is the most popular movie nowadays in China. How many people watch it? Yeah, you haven't contributed to. I haven't. You haven't contributed to the box office. So they just want to be the number one, right? So this is also the national pride and also the national about that because. My friends in China complain if they criticize the movie, they will be censored. Yeah, you're not allowed to criticize. And also, my friends working within the system or like the school, public school, or the public servant, they are required to watch the movie to boost the box office. So what is the purpose for that? Is to boost the national pride, right? Because we became the number one. And now it's the top 10, among the top 10 internationally, I mean, historically, right? And they just want to be the number one of those motion pictures. I mean, and it's already been the motion pictures number one, right? So, yeah, animation one, right? So yeah, so that's the record. It's like a deep seek. They just so the official narrative will just really associate the deep seek with the power of the country, right? So and also there's a lot of interpretation of the movie. It's like this is represent the White House. So the movie is anti-American. And why people love to watch the movie, there do a lot of audiences find the anti-American sentiment in the movie. So that's trigger more people to follow, to watch the movie. So this is also, it's quite related to the book. It's whether the war for diplomacy or the sentiment of that kind of sentiment is still relevant nowadays, right? So yeah. This is about my first book. The second book is nothing related to my first book, but yeah, I'm the person to connect them. I have been covered foreign policy for more than 20 years, but at the same time, I also do like reporting on gender issues for more than 20 years. So that's why I always be interested in sexual violence. When I was a journalist, our program and working with the other sector, we do make some changes, like policy changes altogether. I mean, not say just the media, but also like other factors, like lawyers or NGOs, and also officials altogether. We work together on the issue of one-child policy and also the domestic violence and the law legislation of domestic violence. So this book, actually, the idea, again, came from the book editor. I just received an email and said, do you have any book ideas? And I said, I don't have. And I think about that. So I just think about the ideas. I think I really want to write about this. This idea, oh, actually, it's my GIF proposal. It came from my failed, didn't pass, didn't got the funding. So, and then I think, okay, I didn't get the funding, I can use my own money and finish it because I really want to write about that. The reason why, I will show you the photo later. So this is, I really want to discuss the role of the news media in Taiwan, Hong Kong, and mainland China. Why I'm interested in 3 places. If we talk about the media system, you can see the differences. So one is the authoritarian media system, and Hong Kong is more towarding to, and we can say semi-authoritarian, and Taiwan is a more open society, so a libertarian media system. So we can compare like news media when you're reporting sexual violence in different media systems, whether there'll be some similarity or differences. I just feel so that's interesting. So here is the book content. So for chapter 1 is talk about why and also the media role, and also some theoretical framework. And second chapter about mainland China, I focus on whether news media can be facilitated social change, like in the social movements, because I'm using Me Too as examples. And Hong Kong, it took me a while to think about the angle, the research questions in Hong Kong, because Hong Kong is quite different if you compare with Taiwan and mainland. So there's not many cases on like a sexual violence, or because we have a relatively mature legal system. So you can, through the legal system, solve the issue. And we also have equal opportunity committee. So the mechanism which allow you to make a complaints and deal with the problem. It's not like Taiwan and Taiwan also, in Taiwan they do have laws, three laws related to sexual violence. But the thing is, the cultural issue is more similar as mainland China. But Hong Kong, culturally, a little bit different from the other 2 places. I think in Hong Kong, relatively we have a more boundary between individual and private life and and also privacy. So but in Hong Kong, I just focus on the role of news media in the age of democratic backsliding. So Taiwan, I think because it's an open society and libertarian media system, so I'm more focused on journalistic practice and ethical issue, and then a comparison and some suggestions. So here is the key research questions. How do news media in the society portray sexual violence, and also to what extent do media practice perpetuate rape culture? How do social media and digital activism influence traditional news coverage? What are the challenges faced by journalists and activists in advocating for gender equality? And how do political system and censorship affect the media ability to address sexual violence? So those are the research questions. And my theoretic framework utilize gatekeeping theory. And also the methodology, I have interviews with journalists and survivors, content analysis of news reporting, and also case study. And also I wanted to provide some suggestions for the journalist, for journalistic practice. I think this is also the purpose of this former GIF project. And also the purpose of this book. So here is the mainland China. I think I'm more interested in the role of news media in the social change. So I think I just make it too small. Okay, so you can see there was a dual role of the media. It's became the potential facilitator for social change, especially news media, because the news media in China is a part of the system. We would say within the system, so it's do have a more room to maneuver compared with outside system factors like activists, students, NGOs. Relatively, news media can do more. But the thing is whether they are fulfill their role to take the responsibility, or it's just because the control of the news media for the last few years, 10 years, have become more and more strong and then more tight. So which make news media not able to even if because Me Too and sexual violence sometimes considered as the very sensitive topics, so that will have impact on news media. So here are used in this chapter. I use two cases. One is Xuanzi versus Zhu Jun, and the other is I use one case, Xuanzi versus Zhu Jun. So do the analysis to see what the news media and the social media, the role social media can play. So you will see at the beginning, news media report quite a lot about the case, but gradually, I think it was censored. So it all depends on social media. So luckily, because Zhu Jun is not although he belongs to the system, right? CCTV is considered as the official media, but he's not the official, or so-called 官员. So it still have some room for the reporting. And so we can see the limitations of the news media, state censorship, right? And lack of balanced investigative reporting, because you don't have the human resources, and you don't have it's just because of censorship, so you don't have the room to do those investigative reporting. So you were not able to provide more thematic frame stories. So instead, you all provide like a episodic frame stories to the audiences. And international, for the case of Xuanzi, international news media, they do cover that a lot. But the thing is, you're not able to, not many people can access to those stories. So there's a lot of limitation. And role of journalists, activists, or reporters. Here is a very interesting topic, which I think, okay, it's worth to further explore. So I use Huang Xueqing as one example. She was a journalist. She was in jail now. So she was a journalist, but she was also an activist, because the first Me Too cases was facilitated by her. She wrote the 公众号的微信 the article on 微信, and got a lot of attention. But at the same time, she also teach the victim, the survivor, how to react to the public, how to frame the story. And also she organized signature among different among the university students. So I still remember I asked her a question when she was here. I invite her for a lecture for our student. Are you going to be a journalist or activist? So I think this is a question for a lot of journalists involved in this kind of social, protest or social, I will not say social movement. Yeah. So this activists, right? So because in China, and it's not in China, censorship, because of censorship. So journalists cannot using the role of journalists to do their journalistic work. But because of their resources and their expertise and a network, so they can facilitate a lot of to let the topic to be seen by the public, and also make some change by using like social media or other resources. But the thing is, there is seems like there are conflicts between the role of a journalist. I mean, if we use like journalists must be neutral, should not. So yeah, I think this is a very interesting topic. I didn't have the opportunity to further study, but I just raised the question here. It's like during the Me Too movement in China and also reporting the sexual violence, you can see journalists in China, they just play a dual role. At the same time, they are the journalists, but at the same time, they're also the activists. So I think it happened in Hong Kong too. Yeah, in 2019. I mean, during some social movement, you will see the similar situation. So what maybe worth to further study. So key takeaways, news media in China has the potential to influence public discourse. Media effective depends on the involving dynamic between the state control, right, and also the public demand for transparency. And the digital activism needed to be complemented by robust independent journalism. That's an ideal situation. And then, yeah, these are Huang Xueqing on the left and these are Xuan's on the right. So one of the reasons I want to do this project, to do the Jive proposal and also write this book. And I just want these two ladies' name to be recorded and their name to be seen, at least in a book. Yeah. So history will tell. So, and here is Hong Kong. So I just use because of pre-2019, it's the government, civil society, and media work together to fight the sexual violence or the post-protests. So the government less responsive to public demand, civil society had limited, and media facing increased censorship. So I was very curious about, so what would be the news media role in sexual violence? So I used the case study. It's the university orientation camp, OCamp. If you still remember, there was a lot of a debate, a discussion, talk on the register by lawmakers, officials, showed a huge interest in this gender equality issue, which was quite surprised me because usually they're not really interested in this kind of issue. But then I would say, okay, actually the government, the politicians and the government do have an agenda. And the target is not to solve the issue of the gender equality or the sexual harassment. The hidden agenda is to control the campus, right? By using this case, because the final suggestion by the politicians and the officials is cancel all those student organized activity, which to take off the autonomy of the campus autonomy. So you can see sexual violence cases this topic can be utilized by the political agenda. So again, recommendations, this is ideally, right? News media, of course, should play a more role, especially provide more information, the discussion, and in a more dependent, do the independent investigation, but this ideally, or ideally. So then Taiwan, I think is more related to journalistic practice. It's just because it's a more open and liberal environment. So you can talk about the journalist practice. So I interviewed the journalists and also the survivors, asked the survivors whether they view the journalists, the news reporting and their interaction with the journalists, whether they feel, okay, any expectations or what they thought about the journalists' work on changing their situation or telling their story. So here, here you will see actually Taiwan's news reporting on sexual violence, especially Me Too, because the Me Too in Taiwan is quite delayed, like 2 years, and then just because of the Netflix drama, TV dramas, and the calling trigger the Me Too in Taiwan. But majority of the victims are using Facebook to telling the story, and then media follow up. So here are just take some of the victims' perspective on the say value journalists, but at the same time they just a majority of them telling there's no differences between news reporting and by using social media by themselves. When we talk about the public reaction and talking about the consequence of the exposure of the case. So then can trigger a lot of a discussion whether the journalistic standard of in Taiwan, what kind of a journalistic standard should be improved. And so Taiwan news media need to enhance journalistic quality. So because I also interview a lot of the journalists, they just don't know, there's lack of a training, so just don't know how to balance the facts, how to track to make the accuracy of the accusation, and even how to dealing with the victims, the survivors. And then after reporting all those cases, their personal mental health, I mean, the journalist's personal mental health is actually also a problem. And nobody deal with, and then no organization dealing with that because there's no like counseling service. This is quite similar in Hong Kong. When the journalists in Hong Kong, they have to cover protests almost every day. And witness a lot of violence almost constantly for a long time, and there was no like psychological mental health support from the organization. So that is also a very important issue. Some comparison. So just compare three places and the key takeaway. So in mainland China, still restrict the role of the news media. In Hong Kong, it's the also because of the backsliding, the democratic backsliding, constrain media freedom and investigative journalism, which also impact the role of the news media. In Taiwan, despite of freedom, the journalistic quality and the sentimentalism limited media impact. So three places also facing different problems. So Hong Kong and mainland became more and more similar. Here are some suggestions, which is also the purpose of this book, is a newsroom culture. So bias, stereotype against the female journalists, promote the gender equality within the newsroom, and also the reporting practice. So the beat is quite important, but I don't think there is a beat on gender issues. So without a beat, which means you're not have adequate training or adequate professional knowledge and skill set. And also institutional support, you need to provide the resources and legal protection. It's just because sometimes you report these cases might causing trouble. I mean, one interviewee in Taiwan, a journalist in Taiwan, he reported a sexual harassment case because the interviewees provide false information, and he was not able to verify it and publish the story. He and the news organization was sued by the accusations, the so-called perpetrators. So that means the organization need to also provide the protection or supporting. Otherwise, the journalists just don't want to follow those stories. Strong mental health support, which is also important. Not many people care about the mental health issue, but actually for journalists who cover, it's not only sexual violence, a lot of other like disaster or war conflicts also need mental health, and also code of ethics. So accuracy and how to protecting victims and how to communicate with the victims. Yeah, so Taiwan do have a guideline, but it's not adequate after talking to those journalists, because the guideline is very broad. So when you're dealing with those victims and specific cases, there's a lot of details. skill, techniques and skills and knowledge. Okay. And legal support, mental health support, mandatory gender studies in journalism education. Yeah, this is what I'm advocated for several years. I think like gender equality education among journalism students is so important. But in reality, I was disappointed. I had a GE course on gender equality by using statistics. Majority, I mean, every semester only one or none journalism students took the course. Majority of them from different departments and majors. I think did very well. But then I just think, okay, journalism students, you needed to pay more attention. But I can say they're more, I don't, yeah, my, after so many years teacher in our department, I don't think they're interested in gender issue. I don't know why. Why? Okay, so yeah, that's it. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Rose. So a lot to talk about. My hunch until your last comment was that this group might actually be more interested in the second book than the first one.
Really?
And that's my general sense of interacting with students. So what I'm going to propose to do is to we'll be very disciplined about this. Think about what you really want to ask or both, right? But we'll devote maybe 5-10 minutes to the first book. Yeah. We'll do with that and then questions. Otherwise, it's going to be messy for our heads if we bounce from book to book, right?
Yeah, sure.
I guess the connecting point between the two books, other than the author, right, is that they're both about predators.
Yes.
Wolves and other predators, right? So let's start with the Wolf Warrior book. I already have a question, but I want to restrain myself and ask if anyone else has a question. Yeah.
Sure. Oh, first of all, congratulations! What a fantastic couple of books. Such intellectual range and such important topics. So congratulations. So on first book of Wolf Warrior, I think something you said towards the end, right, which is that this aspect of diplomacy is one of many other levers that's available for foreign affairs or foreign policy. I guess the others would include military might and financial inducements and the charm offensive, being appealing and attractive and making great movies, not to be number one, but to be attractive, right? So I wonder, can you say something about how coordinated all of this is? You know, I mean, does it seem to you that it's a very well planned combination of which levers to pull, when, and so on? You know? Or is there something a bit more random and haphazard and almost unexpected sometimes when we think about that?
I would say the individual performance are random, or it depends on personal factors. But the trend to be more assertive, you needed to look back to Mao's era. So it would be like a sure outcome. Because at the end, it's the ideology or fight between different ideology, right? And also China at the beginning, I mean, CCP considered as the major power or the great power to be the leader and to at least to be the leader of one polar of the world. So the competition between China and the US or if it's the Soviet Union before, it would be inevitable. So yeah, so that would not be like if that was a plan. Oh, it's not a plan. It's rooted in CCP, and but the performance, how to perform it, how to execute that is quite random. I don't think they have very.
That's quite random.
Yeah, I don't think they have very detailed plan.
It's not like orchestrated.
Yeah, it's like everybody just got the signal and they're trying to find their way to perform. Yeah.
And I guess you imagine like you want to exercise both fear and love, right?
Right.
You want to do
Yeah.
the love thing, but you balance it with fear. You do fear, but you make sure you balance it with love or something. But not really. Right?
Not really.
Right.
It's a sometimes a work forward, some retreat. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And
And
even the retreat is not.
personality factors would affect it as well.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So some
yeah.
diplomats, I guess, are just naturally more wolf-like and skilled at being aggressive. Some are not. Would that
Yeah,
be right?
it's like I would
Yeah.
want to use the example of Wang Yi because I followed him for when he was the very junior official in the foreign ministry. He was very kind, polite, and womanizer. I mean,
He was a real wolf.
no, womanizer. Oh, he was loved by. I mean, when he was the ambassador in Japan, he was so popular among those housewives in Japan. He showed on the TV show, and he was so, gentle, and even face-to-face interaction, he was not that kind of a person who would say, the recent years, I was so surprised. He was the most surprised person who changed. But then I realized, okay, if you want to be the foreign minister and then became the party, the party guy who in charge of foreign, if you want to be into the system, okay, to show your royalty is the must, right? And then how to show your royalty is you praise the leader and also follow the rhetoric style of your leader. So that's why it's not him, it's all level of the officials. They're using, like Xi really use Mao's rhetoric style. Mao Zedong yuan, right? So it's a quite old style. But then you just realize, you just read all those official documents and statements and the statements of different level of officials are using the same language.
So in that case, in the case of an ambitious diplomat, the audience actually is neither the foreign audience nor the domestic audience. The audience is Xi Jinping.
Yeah.
Right? So that relates to Ted's question here, which he asking about possible differences in the Mandarin and English about what is stated, and does that indicate whether the domestic audience is actually more important than the foreign one?
I do think domestic audience is more important than the international one, because for domestic audiences, it's also a strategy to unite the people and boost the confidence. And foreign ministry is how to deal with the outside world is one of the source to demonstrate how strong or how confident the country is, the government.
Other questions? Yes.
Thank you so much, Ross, for the
Get a mic so that
Do you need a
Thank you. This is also my first time being in a double book talk, and I'm just so impressed by your productivity. And the question is about, I think, follows the line of like the performance of those spokesperson people. How performative do you think that is, or do you think that this kind of aggression or hostility also has the potential to actually impact foreign policy making, or based on your observation, is this purely performative, or do you think that this will also carry over to actual impact in the real world?
I would say, okay, so first of all, the foreign policy decision makers are not the diplomats or the party leaders, right? So I don't think there's a direct impact on the foreign policy. But in dealing with detailed issues, this kind of attitude will transform into action. For example, like the French ambassador, Luqiu. So how he dealing with like local people. So for face-to-face daily communication between like a diplomat and also foreign officials, so you will feel a difference, right? The change of the attitude. That will have some impact because people interpret foreign policies not only by the
tweets.
or the text. The text from the top leader, but they're also dealing with the day-to-day. Right. So they do have impacts. Yeah, that's true.
But I think to me, one of the interesting takeaways was you're suggesting that actually this has been said of Trump, right? Don't take things too literally.
Yeah.
And in your view, if I get your book correctly, there is a difference between the rhetoric and the policy. And the
Yes.
policy tends to be much more stable, rational, and so on.
And also practical.
Practical,
Yeah.
yeah. And for me, one of the clearest signs of this was when India and China had one of their fake wars, right? Throwing things at each other.
And the border, right?
border skirmish,
Yeah.
right? And the behaviors were very different. I mean, so the Indian media became extremely nationalistic and continued being aggressively
But not many
nationalistic.
reporting in China.
But yes, so
Yeah.
so what I read is that there was clearly instruction from the central government to the Chinese media, don't play this up.
Yeah.
So which to me suggests that the Beijing very much knows that this kind of hyper-nationalism that they're promoting could go out of control.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And they're going to use it very, very carefully. So to me, that was a very, very striking illustration of how Beijing knows, in the sense that it's playing with fire.
Mhm.
Yeah, you can stoke up domestic passions about trivial things, but for something that could lead to a war, be very, very careful.
But I happy to add one thing. As for India, it's a different political system, right? So for India, nationalism can boost election, the votes, right? But for Beijing, they no need to think about the votes.
Yeah.
So they only needed to think about whether they should control this kind of information or not.
Right. So my question that I had was a little later. I'd like to ask you a little more about what we can understand by the term aggressive or aggression. Because actually, we could interpret it in different ways, some of which is harmful, some is not, right? So it might be aggressive for a government to say, here's our line, go beyond that, and there will be war. There will be consequences, right? That is one form of being, in a sense, quite theoretically aggressive. Don't mess with this, right? Interfere in Taiwan, we are prepared to go to war. That's one form of aggression. Another form of so-called aggression would be to do with feelings. We're going to show how angry we are, right? You have not used the word Taiwan correctly. In some literature, you claim that Taiwan is a country. We are going to show that you cannot just mess with the feelings of 1.3 billion people, right? And we're never again going to be insulted like this. And we're going to be very aggressive and emotional in our response. It's a different kind of aggression, right? It's so what are we talking about here, really? I mean, to me, for a government to say, here is our hard line, beyond that, you're asking for trouble, is actually more acceptable than this kind of, don't insult our feelings, which is, because where does that end? I mean, how are we supposed to, how are other countries supposed to respond when a big country says, they're going to punish us for insulting their feelings? What does it mean to insult their feelings?
So there is a book, an article talking about hurting Chinese people's feeling, right? It's all frequently appear on People's Daily, 中国人民感情受到伤害中国人民感情, and also constantly appear in a spokesperson's statement. But I don't think they recent years, if you read their scripts, they seldom using this kind of narrative terms. I would say, yeah. We are talking about expressed anger and also a warning, right? Now I would say it's more and more towards like send a warning to outside people, to the other countries, instead of make themselves as a victim. Yeah, I think you can see this kind of change. And then you look at those real, in the real world, investment and also sanction on the officials, on certain politicians, other people. Those are the new strategies. Those are the new practice. But I think those are more important than those wording or literally.
So how
did
would
you
you
count that
define?
as did you count it as wolf warrior, the sensitive, hurt my feelings, victimhood? Was that counted as wolf
How
warrior?
did you define aggression?
Yeah, so in our book, you will see how we teach the machine to differentiate negative sentiment and assertive terms. Hurt our feeling is not it's not counted as the as wolf warrior language.
Okay.
Yeah.
Actually, there's a third way to be aggressive, which again I think is less acceptable than simply just drawing a line, and that is to start attacking other countries.
That's
right?
what the
And basically saying that this society or the civilization, etc., has all these faults, etc. That's a form of aggression too.
So it's a quite a recent. It's under Xi's presidency. You will see attack other politicians and countries. For example, like Nancy Pelosi and Marco Rubio, or the Taiwan president. So those are the politicians constant to be attacked. But before they were using more general, but under Xi's presidency, it's will be more specific, and also using the words we will say more aggressive. It's more like the fighting language, which is in Mao's era. 斗争语言，4个字，usually 4 words， 忘我之心，yeah, so it's in Chinese, but in English, I don't think you will not feel that so special. So, but in Chinese, specifically, you can feel that kind of hostility.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm kind of curious about the second book, because when mentioning about the
Could you just wait for the mic, otherwise people on Zoom can't hear you.
So I'm kind of curious about the second book because
I guess we're ready to move on to the second book. Okay.
Yes. So when mentioning the Me Too movement in China, I kind of recall a significant case about Peng Shuai and Zhang Gaoli because it's really associated with the top CCP leaders. So do you think the reporters in China also act as a dual characters in those cases when facing the case related to the top CCP leader?
No, impossible. It's just because of the media system, right? So when it's related to such high level officials, it will be considered as the state secret, 国家机密, or it's at least a sensitive issue, right? So first of all, when the news media got the idea from the social media, Peng Shuai posted the first post on the Weibo, I think they have the self-censorship because this is related to Zhang Gaoli. Everybody work in the news industry understand if anything related to senior officials, you should be very careful. So at least you need to ask the senior editor. And the senior editor will ask the chief editor, and the chief editor will ask him for the opinion from the 宣传部 propaganda department, who are in charge of all the news organization. So this kind of system, which is impossible for them to publish, at least the top leaders say, okay, this guy is it's the one I want to get rid of. So maybe this scandal can be you. It's like the say 贪污 the bribes, yeah. Corruption cases. Some people, some high-level officials, their scandal can be reported. Yeah, but then you will consider as a fraction the conference between different fractions. It's not like systematically, they don't have that mechanism which will let you to report freely. So Peng Shuai's case, I would say, I spotted the post and then sent to New York Times. It was my friends in New York Times and Wall Street Journal. The post was deleted after 20 minutes. So yeah, and then you can see nothing on Chinese news media, right? But the funny thing is, almost all my friends in mainland China got the screen screen capture through WeChat, I think, Weixin and different means. Yeah, But news media, very difficult too. No, it's not difficult, it's impossible.
Thanks, Rose. That's a great sharing. And about the Me Too, I remember a movie.
She said.
No, it's about sexual harassment. A very famous sentence. A guy say that about sexual harassment, that's not about sex. It's about power.
Oh yeah.
So that's all about, just like the case of Pang Shui, But in Hong Kong, so you raise a very interesting question, why are journalism students not quite interested in gender issue in Hong Kong? Because in Hong Kong, I think the situation is quite different with Taiwan and England. We are so open, And then the gender equality issue in Hong Kong is not so obvious. Usually as a man, I think the woman is so powerful, in most cases, and then in the journalism, we have some cases about something like the Me Too. But for example, that's in school. The teachers abusively use the power to, harass the female students, something like that. And then, so that's, partly that's the reason of why you observe that the Me Too issue is not quite, interested, for our students. But I think it's important. If you want to do some more, I think you have to do some of the public education, something like the mental illness, because in the reporting level, usually the Hong Kong reporters will not pay attention to how to do their job, according to some of these kind of ethical principles. But when someone, try to advocate or doing something or proposing some of the guidelines, I think it is good for more discussion. But the point is I want to raise is, in Hong Kong, I think it's really different with mainland and Taiwan, because basically our system is more open. And then the equality issue, for my perception, is far better than these two traditional Chinese society and community.
Yeah, so that's the problem of Hong Kong, because the majority of people believe there's no gender issues. It's quite similar as South Korea, right? Because like South Korea, many years ago, they have legislation, and because of the social movement, and everybody believed, okay, gender issue, we solve the gender issue. But here in Hong Kong, I was surprised when I was joined the university, that was 2018, Equal Opportunity Committee made a survey. It's like 28%, I couldn't remember the exact number, 28% of the university students experienced sexual harassment in campus. But I was surprised, not many news media too. Just a short story, but there's no further investigative reporting. There's no public discussion about the issue, and seems like all the university want to downplay it. And I do believe they have a good relationship with the news media, so it's not a lot of coverage. But the good thing is, like BU, after that they set up independent committee. So which can dealing with this kind of complaints, which is good. But I still think if the media can play more active role, that would be much better, especially for public, raise the awareness of the public, and also, as you said, the education, right? News reporting, according to the public discussion, is part of the education. So if news media ignore all those stories or issues, I don't know. I just think, okay, it's missed opportunity. And again, also have some bias or within the newsroom in Hong Kong, because I think it's just because the editors, the top management are male. It's quite similar as US newsroom. So they don't think the gender issue is important, or just believe gender issue already be solved. Okay, so nothing to improve.
I remember you had just mentioned about the name of that movie is Disclosure. Disclosure. It is a very good movie that's about also the sexual harassment, but who harassed is a female boss, to his male subordinate. So it's interesting. So I think the Me Too issue is not only about the gender. I mean,
Yeah, it's
gender
about the
is
structure.
important, but
It's about the
the
structure.
equality of human beings, basically.
Yeah.
You said, you know.
Yes.
Yeah. So yes, thanks.
I mean, just sort of extending from that point, right? And I don't know whether the book covers it or not. I mean, I assume it is really sexual violence against women,
Yes.
right?
No,
But-
it's against us.
Okay. So can you say a little bit more about how the media organizations have adapted to greater visibility of sexual violence against men or sexual violence against LGBTQ and the intersections of that, right? Or trans men and women or gender non-binary. Are there convergences or does it look different when it comes to those?
Okay, so in mainland China, so LGBTQ issues are not allowed to reported by the media, so that would not be an issue. They were invisible.
Okay.
But that not represent because like 20 years ago when I was a journalist, I covered a lot of the LGBTQ issue. At that time, it then became to be seen, and there was a lot of a discussion, which is good. But now, no. And in Taiwan, actually, the sexual harassment cases involve in different gender. So in my interviews, one of the survivor are male. So he accused, well then, he accused, yeah, so, okay. So I think when I discussed sexual violence, it's not only against women, it's against as you say, as a broad, as a individual, because it's all about the power issue, right?
So say in Hong Kong, right, where the consensus seems to be that gender is a settled issue. Alright, so the Hong Kong case, it sounds to me like the feeling is gender is settled, but then it isn't, right? Because there's, right? So does it appear more pronounced in Hong Kong where it can be reported and where it is maybe an emerging issue?
I think it's in Hong Kong is the newsroom, at least in the newsroom, believe that the gender issue has been settled. And also because the legal system, and if the case go to the court, so there's some requirement, right? Some restriction in the reporting. So Hong Kong a little bit different from the other two places.
Like trans and all of
yeah,
that.
trials, but that doesn't mean every case went to trial, right? But the thing is, it's just a lack of reporting. I just try very hard to trying to search cases which are reported by the media. Not many. Like Me Too movement, we had the first case here in Hong Kong with Luqiu, a female athlete, right, accusing her coach. Like that was the first Me Too case after the Me Too movement came here in Hong Kong in 2018. But it disappeared very soon, right? The media didn't pay a lot of attention. And also, if you look at those news stories, the reporting, I mean, the frame of the stories still have some problem. You didn't get very more details or to help you to understand what's going on. Yeah.
So what I'm hearing is that it seems that maybe one of the misperceptions within Hong Kong media and more generally is that maybe there is a justified confidence that the system here works quite well, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, so even if there are 20% of students who are experiencing it, there's a confidence that no, the university does have ways to resolve it, right?
Yeah.
And similarly with the courts, there is recognition of equal rights
And also
even
we
for
have
trans
the
people.
Equal Rights
so
Committee.
that's right. So
Yeah.
so my interpretation, and maybe it's an excuse, right? Maybe the reason why journalists are not worked up about it is the sense that no, this can be left really as a private issue. You know, there's the system works quite well to address all these private grievances. There's no need to elevate it or campaign to so on. But I think your point is completely valid. I mean, even if it is a private issue where the system works quite well, surely there's more that can be done on the education level and so on.
Yes, for example, in my class, I invite the NGO came to our class to talk about how to report like LGBTQ. And you will see still a lot of problem on news stories. Journalists didn't pay a lot of attention about the privacy issue and how to using the words and how to use the photo. and how to describe what's going on. For example, there's so many examples like the queer using he or she when you do your report. So yeah, there's still a lot of things to be done. Maybe compare with Taiwan and mainland China, so we're no need to worry about like justice not to be seen. But the thing is, that you still have a lot of room to improve your reporting.
One point that I picked up that I learned a lot from in your chapter on mainland China was that even though the mainstream media journalists are obviously more restricted than social media, they are able to do something that bloggers and activists can't, because they have this discipline of listening to all sides, gathering evidence, and so on. So they, you argue that they actually have quite a uniquely valuable role to play in being a kind of a neutral clearinghouse for all these allegations, and therefore when they produce their reports, it is more credible, right? Yeah. It's like, because they've gone through this journalistic exercise. Then of course you also say that, I guess because of that, you are uncomfortable about journalists then crossing a line into activism. And I think of course this is a very interesting.
Yeah, I think that can be discussed.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and I share your discomfort because on the one, so it all depends what we mean by activism, right? And we know we live in societies where, this applies in Singapore as well, if a journalist just happens to be very passionate about something and therefore keeps track of this issue and writes a lot about this issue, they would be accused of being an activist. But no, they're just a caring journalist, right? They're not. They're still acting as following the traditional rules of journalism. And I think there's always a danger that the passionate journalist who understands the topic deeply and is investing time and research, often on their own time, right, to get to know the issue, will then be accused of crossing a line. But to me, that's not crossing a line. Yeah. That's just being a good journalist, right? So I think, where I would say is where even editors may feel that they're crossing a line is where they don't just use journalism, but then use the tools of civil society. Right? Yes. Organizing something, setting up a network, setting up a NGO even, organizing a petition, and so on. I guess the best practice internationally that big news organizations would say is, as long as you really insulate that from your work, it is actually not breaking a rule. Yeah, but of course it is difficult to protect the media from then the accusation that this taints your journalism as well, right? It proves that your journalism is biased. I think seems to be the difficulty.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I echo your observations. Yeah, and
a final question. We can squeeze in one more.
Yeah. Final question?
Okay, in that case,
thank you so much.
My only remaining job is to thank you again.
So thank you so much for coming here.
And for being an inspiration. That's a new target. 2 books.
Yeah, congratulations.
In a short time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.